Hello and welcome to Wawa Echo. This is the Kane to my Undertaker. Today we are presenting to you our top 10 favorite superstars, WWE superstars. And we want to make it clear before we go ahead through the list. You'll notice that some names are left off, some great names, such as AJ Styles, who is currently even rising in WWE. We are making this, it's a favorite video, but at the same time it's also based on accomplishments within the WWE itself or the WWF. So anything outside of that we didn't really take into account, or else AJ Styles would be at the top.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And other people like that. So we do have a few honorable mentions though, just people that achieved a lot and left a lot of legacy in WWE that, I mean, we just didn't find them to be top 10 worthy of our own personal list, our favorites. Ric Flair, legendary. John Cena, 16-time world champion, just like Ric Flair. The Rock is obviously, you have to mention The Rock when you mention most popular WWE superstar. Chris Benoit, he did a lot for the WWE. Daniel Bryan, and this was we probably put him on here because he doesn't really fit in with the rest of the guys we just mentioned. Our last one is Edge, and he barely fits in with him simply because Daniel Bryan hasn't been in WWE that long. But at the same time, the little time that he's been there, he's made such a big impact. And just kind of shaking up the way people view indie superstars. But Daniel Bryan changed a lot within the WWE, and so he is entertaining to watch to us. So those are our honorable mentions, and then the way we will do the rest of these top 10s is instead of having separate videos, we love to do our videos together. So we're just going to name our top. We're going to go through top 10 or number 10, and then he'll say his, I'll say mine, and why we believe for them to be number 10 on our specific list. Yeah. And then we'll put it somewhere, maybe either on the screen or in the description, so you can kind of keep up with it easier as we talk.
Of course, we do want to mention, guys, that this is a personal opinion list. This is obviously our own opinions. They are different. We do have a lot of similarities in our list, not in placement, but we have a lot of similar superstars. Of course, if you have a different top 10 list, then that is perfectly okay. Please leave that in the description. We would love to know who your top 10 favorite wrestlers are. And of course, this is based on a lot of different factors. Some of them, we're obviously not talking just championships. Otherwise, people like Ric Flair and John Cena would be on the list because they have like the highest of all of them. So this has to do with their championship reigns, different rivalries they've had, the different gimmicks and characters that they've done, personal connection to them. There's a lot of factors that went into each of these names, but just remember that this is our own personal opinions, and it's perfectly okay for you to disagree, even though you're wrong.
Number 10, I have Trish Stratus and Lita, because I could not put one or the other, and I just feel like I had such a hard time figuring out anyway who is number 10. I mean, it's in your top 10, but it's the lowest, so it's like hard to decide, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, Trish is a 7-time world champion, or no. Trish Stratus is a 7-time women's champion, and Lita herself is a 4-time women's champion. And Trish even won the Hardcore Championship. They're both Hall of Famers. They set the tone for women's wrestling back in their day. I think they sort of started the change that we're seeing now, just in slow motion, kind of. So Lita was part of Team Extreme, and then she was with Edge. She managed Rated RKO, and they've both just done a lot of great things for the WWE.
Yeah, definitely. My number 10 is Triple H, which I know is going to be controversial to a lot of people. Triple H is definitely in most people's top 5s, at least. I've got him in the top 10. I definitely had to put him in the top 10, although there are just a lot more people that I just favored more. It's definitely just a personal thing. He's done so much for this company, and I love that he's definitely going to be the future of the company when it comes to creative. He's definitely done a lot with the creation of NXT, and the rise of indie stars, which has been really great for the company. And he is also a 14-time world champion, which is the third highest of all, right after Ric Flair and John Cena. He's been a part of awesome factions: the Corporation, DX, Evolution, the two-man Power Trip, one of the best. I love all of his factions. They've really just influenced his character a lot, and he's just so charismatic. So just really a great talker. I love his attitude. He's a fantastic heel. He's one of my favorite heels, definitely. But I tend to like faces more than heels, which is why I have him a bit lower than a lot of people do. I just tend to root for the faces, and Triple H just never really worked for me as a face. I just always preferred him as a heel, but as a heel, he's one of the best.
So my number 9 superstar is CM Punk. Now, CM Punk, I loved his run in WWE. I wish it hadn't ended the way it ended, but I completely understand. And it was very controversial as it is. But I personally liked CM Punk. He was the sort of tweener type sometimes. I mean, he was obviously a heel most of the time, but there was some things that you just saw that he would do that's face like, but he would still act like a heel. I just think he played his character perfectly. And he is a 6-time world champion. If we include the ECW championship, which we will be in this video for the sake of world titles, he is a 6-time, and he's a 2-time Money in the Bank winner. He is the only superstar to have won the Money in the Bank ladder match twice. Edge has been the Money in the Bank holder 2 times, but he won it in a different way from Mr. Kennedy, who won the match itself. So Punk is the only one who's won the match itself twice, and so I think that's really cool. I like Punk. I wish he was back. I hope he comes back to WWE. I don't see that happening, but I wish he did.
My number 9 is Lita. Lita was always my favorite women's wrestler during my first tenure of watching WWE. She was just, I loved her because she was so different, because she was just a cool, didn't care what anyone else thought. She was going to be her own person, and I really loved that. She was just so, she was hardcore. She was just awesome. She was so different from the other women at the time. I loved her rivalry with Trish Stratus. It's one of the best women's rivalries, I think, in WWE. Of course, a lot of the new women are definitely putting in for beating that out, but at the time, they were definitely the 2 greatest women, and they definitely, like Zack said, they were making the transition to what women's wrestling used to be to what it is now. And it does think that they were a little bit ahead of their time, but they definitely contributed to the ride that we have now. But she was just super awesome. Zack mentioned a lot of her accomplishments that she had through WWE. Just me personally, I just really loved her attitude. I loved her style. I loved that she could compete with a lot of the guys with what she did in the ring. She had some amazing spots in a lot of ladder matches and stuff like that. Even though she didn't compete in the matches, she would help out the Hardys to win their matches, and I just loved everything that she did, and I think that she was, in my opinion, the best women's wrestler.
Number 8, I have Chris Jericho, the GOAT, greatest of all time. Chris Jericho is a 6-time world champion. He's a 9-time Intercontinental Champion, which is the highest in WWE history. And he was the first ever undisputed champion after beating both The Rock and Stone Cold in the same night. You can't get really any higher than that. I mean, defeating 2 of the arguably the most popular wrestlers of the time. Chris Jericho has done a lot, and I love his character. I think maybe in recent years it's kind of gotten a little stale, but I think this past run and the friendship with Kevin Owens and the rivalry with Kevin Owens really rejuvenated some interest in him as a character and as a sort of a wrestler who sells tickets and just gets interested into the WWE. I think he's done a fantastic job with that. He did have the rivalry of the decade, or it was the rivalry of the decade with Shawn Michaels in the 2000s.
Yeah.
And I remember that rivalry, and I was invested in that one. It was really good. Jericho is he's entertaining to watch, and with the introduction of the list, I just think, and the stupid idiot chants. I mean, he can be funny, he can be entertaining, and I love him.
My number 8 is the Viper, the Legend Killer, the Apex Predator, the man with the most nicknames. That should be his new nickname. Randy Orton. Randy Orton has always been one of my favorite wrestlers to watch. Obviously, when it comes to a personal level, he's done a lot of stuff that I haven't agreed with. But when it comes to just in the ring, he's definitely always been and always will be one of my favorites to watch. I love everything he does. All of his moves are just so amazing to watch. I love his like power slam as his opponent's coming off the ropes. I love his draping DDT. I just love the way he moves. He's just unique in the way that he does things. It's really cool. You know, the RKO is one of my favorite finishers of all times, and I love just waiting for that inevitable moment when you know that an RKO is coming out of nowhere. He is, of course, a 13-time world champion in his he is currently in, as the making of this video, he is currently in his 13th reign as champion after winning the championship from Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 33. He's been a part of amazing factions like Rated RKO, Evolution. Legacy is not... It had an awesome concept. I really love the concept. The execution, of course, unfortunately, was not there, but a great idea. And, of course, in recent years, and this past year, he has come back from a stale period by joining the Wyatt family, bringing the just the interest in that. I think one of the best storylines of the year, for sure. And I love that it's not over with by far. I definitely can't wait to see how the feud continues down this year. And I can't wait to see how Randy continues. He's definitely got a few years left in him. And I'm ready to see how many more RKOs get thrown out of nowhere.
My number 7 pick, this man was hard to rank on the list because he's done so much. He was so popular. The time that I grew up with wrestling is like right at the end of his run with WWE. It's the man himself, the rattlesnake, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I gotta say, still one of the most entertaining people to watch. No matter where he is or what he's doing on TV, I'm in it. Like, I love listening to his podcast. I haven't in a while, but I've enjoyed it. I love watching him wrestle, watching some older matches. I marked out when he showed up at WrestleMania with Mick Foley and Shawn Michaels. Oh my gosh.
So awesome.
I mean, it's great to see him. And after all, he's a 6-time world champion. He won the King of the Ring in 1996. He won the Royal Rumble in 97, 98, and 2001. And he's the only person so far to have 3 Royal Rumble wins until John Cena 2.0, aka Roman Reigns, gets his 3rd. I was about to say he will win the rest. He will win the rest of them
for all eternity.
Stone Cold is a Hall of Famer. Of course, he had to be inducted. Just one of the most legendary. His feud with Mr. McMahon and the McMahon family was just probably the most entertaining part of the Attitude Era. Very edgy, but not like too far. Well, I guess sometimes it might have gone a little too far, but it was entertainment. And Stone Cold knows how to entertain. He knows how to go out there and put on a good match. And it was hard to put him as low as number 7, but that's just where he fell.
My number 7 is the Big Red Machine, the little brother to the phenom he is, Kane. Kane was one of my favorite people to watch during my younger days watching WWE. He was so different to everyone. I loved Mask Kane. I think that was my favorite of him, his first tenure as Mask Kane. I don't think they should have taken it off him personally, but that's neither here nor there. He was just really intimidating, quiet. He didn't say anything, and as compared to a lot of the big talkers at that time, he stood out as the one who didn't talk. And he just said everything in the ring, and he was super intimidating. I hate that he hasn't accomplished as much in WWE as I feel like he should have. He is only a 2-time world champion. That is, of course, including one run as ECW champion. And he is a 10-time tag team champion, which is quite impressive. But in singles competition, of course, he hasn't had the run that I wish he would have. He's a Money in the Bank winner, though, and he is legendary when it comes to the Royal Rumble. When everyone thinks of the Royal Rumble, one of the first things they think of is Kane. And of course, one of his most legendary performances was in 2001 Royal Rumble, where he just decimated everyone. He set the record that was not broken for 13 years, I think, before big old Roman Reigns broke it, of course. Unfortunately, he hasn't won a Royal Rumble himself, which I feel like he should have. I feel like just that's the only reason why I put Kane as low as number 7. If he had been given the push that I feel like he deserved, I would have had him definitely top 5 for sure. But unfortunately, just with what he was given, I just had to put him at only number 7.
So going on to number 6, I picked the man, the architect, Seth Rollins.
The Kingslayer.
The Kingslayer. I was just enjoyed Seth Rollins, and honestly, if it was purely on current superstars who gauge my interest the most, it would probably be Seth Rollins. I don't know. It's just interesting, and I think that all started with the Shield. Whenever I loved the Shield when they came in. I loved how they just completely dominated everything they did. I loved, I guess, the mind games that Seth Rollins would play. He seemed to be the brains of the whole operation, and while Roman Reigns was kind of the muscle of it all, and then you had Dean Ambrose, who was supposedly the leader, and he was booked to kind of look as such.
He was like the voice.
Yeah, and so I've loved Seth Rollins, 2-time world champion, and he's only been in WWE since 2013, I believe. He's been part of the Shield. He was part of the Authority whenever he aligned himself with Triple H after turning on the Shield, which I think was another very memorable moment. Anyone who has watched wrestling in the past decade, that's just one of the biggest ones is the Shield coming through, destroying everything. Seth turns his back on them, and he was Money in the Bank winner in 2014. His most recent feud with Triple H has to be one of the most interesting in the past few years, because of the suspense with Triple H being gone, and with Seth Rollins injuring his knee again right before WrestleMania. That's why I put him at number 6. I think he's just very interesting to watch.
Yeah, definitely. He's the only person to have ever cashed in Money in the Bank at WrestleMania, which was definitely the highlight of the most recent years when it comes to WrestleMania. Definitely. He also has just done a lot. He is the first ever person that's ever won the World Champion and U.S. Championship at the same time, beating out Mr. John Cena, surprisingly enough. So one of the few to do that. So that's definitely an accomplishment as well. Seth is definitely one of the best of the current generation. At my number 6, though, I have the GOAT, Chris Jericho. A little bit higher than Zack had, but Chris Jericho, like Zack talked a lot about his accomplishments, which is super amazing. His accomplishments being the highest, having the highest amount of reigns for Intercontinental Champion, being the first ever undisputed champion. Of course, those are great accolades. The thing I've loved most about Chris Jericho is his personality and his character. I loved him when he debuted. His rock and roll persona was a bit different from others in at the time, and it was really cool. I love how he's invented himself throughout the years with the Y2J, what's the rock and what is it he used to say?
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll something. That was amazing. I love that. The Y2J, the stupid idiot, like Zack said, the list, a great addition. The scarf thing, the light up jacket. When he came back here recently for his latest run in WWE, he got a huge pop. People love Chris Jericho. I love Chris Jericho. And I think it's amazing for someone his age to continue on, and of course he has accomplished a lot. He's gotten the U.S. Championship, so he's gotten kind of every single thing you can in WWE, and one of the few to do so. So definitely Chris is definitely one of the GOATs for sure.
All right, now we're in the top 5. This is so exciting because it was so hard to put together this list, and much less who's in the top 5.
Yeah.
For me, it was almost no question top 3, but then who do you put in the extra 2 spots? I don't know. So, no, my number 5 is the Big Red Machine, Kane, and so we talked a little bit about him earlier. I just think he's deserved a lot more than he's gotten, but with what he's been given is the reason why he's number 5. What he's been given, he's just taken and ran with, and I do think that. I do think the storyline with him taking off his mask and then like massacring everyone in his path right after, where he looked like he was gonna kill RVD, he was gonna kill JR. He set JR on fire actually, right after that happened too. That was entertaining, but I think that he should have either never taken off the mask, because now we know what happened. I mean, he never really fully came back, or he should have just he should have put the mask back on after he defeated the fake Kane, who came a couple years later. Of course, it was symbolic whenever that feud. I won't go too far into detail, but at the end of the feud, he kicked the fake Kane out of the door, out of the arena, and he kept the mask. I think he should have put it on and became the masked Kane again. But, however, I do think Kane is deserving of a top 5 spot. He is a great wrestler. Like you said, he's not a great talker because he doesn't have to. He just stood out as the guy who just kicked a bunch of people's butts.
Yeah, definitely. My number 5 is, of course, the controversial one, CM Punk. Obviously, Zack had CM Punk on his list as well. Obviously, we've got a lot of similarities. We both have a lot of similarities in who we love to watch. But CM Punk is definitely he's one on my list that's very unique in the fact that he's one of the most recent. He had a very short run, but it was very memorable, as Zack said. He in his very short time, he was given 6 world championships, and he has had the longest reign as world champion in the past decade, which is really impressive. He was so cool because he was just that guy that everyone wants to be. He said screw it to the authority, and that's what we would all love to do. We'd love to say screw it to whoever's in charge of us, but we can't because we're not CM Punk. But he was just really cool. I loved his style. I loved his different gimmicks, like with his straight edge society. Thought that was really cool. A little, I think could have been a lot more, but I think that what it was really cool. His change from heel to kind of tweener, as Zack said, was really good for him because he was super popular. Even to this day, he is probably the most over WWE superstar, and he's not even a WWE superstar anymore. That's how impressive and awesome and memorable CM Punk was, and he may never come back to WWE. I hope he could, but I'm not sure if that would be possible. But if it could be, then I can't wait for that day if possible. And if that happens, he will probably break into at least the top 3 if he continues to be his amazing self.
Number 4, who I have for number 4, Randy Orton. I'm super entertained by him. Now, as Parker said earlier, he did have a stale period, obviously, and I think when you're in WWE as long and you work better as a heel or a face, you eventually become stale. And I think Randy Orton just worked best as a heel. When he was a face, he just wasn't that entertaining. But when he did heel things, that's when he was most popular. That's when people loved him the most. I've always been a fan of his. I loved his Evolution days, like right at the end, right as he was kicked out, as he got the World Heavyweight Championship, and he was kicked out of Evolution. He had that feud with Triple H. I thought that was really good. I just think, like you said, I think he's very. I like the way he moves. It's like he has a lot of in-ring psychology, and he knows where he's at all times, and that RKO out of nowhere is so devastating. And I think he's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. One of the most entertaining, in my opinion.
Definitely. And at my number 4 is Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio, he wasn't given a whole lot, but what he did, I feel like, was really memorable and was really awesome. He was only a 3-time world champion, but he did a lot. Like, he was definitely... The thing I loved about him most was that he was the ultimate underdog. And that was what was so cool about his character, is he was the little man in up against all the big men, and he came out as the victor in most circumstances. The 619 is an amazing finisher. It was one of my favorites to watch. I loved his theme song. He was great. I love pretty much everyone's theme song on this list, though, so that's not really saying a whole lot. But I did love his theme song. I loved his uniqueness as a luchador. I love the style of the luchadors. I hate that we don't have the best representation of it now with Sin Cara and Kalisto. They definitely don't have the same charisma and the same style that Rey Mysterio had. One of the best moments ever was when he won the Royal Rumble in 2006 for his recently passed best friend Eddie Guerrero. That was an awesome moment. It was one of my favorite Royal Rumbles. Just one of the best performances. He just did so much with what he was given, and he was just that ultimate underdog, which is who I love to root for. So it was memorable enough that I definitely had to put him in the top 4. Hope that maybe one day he could come back to WWE. I think he's up for it, and I think that he definitely kept the relationship for the possibility of it. So here's hoping.
Number 3, like I said earlier, the top 3 for me was no question at all. I knew who I was going to pick. I've always had these top 3 pretty much picked out. So, starting with number 3, Triple H. 14-time world champion. And, he's done literally everything there is to do, I think. He hasn't won every championship, but... he's led so many factions, so many stables who were just completely dominating of their time. Evolution dominated everyone in their path. Then DX, that was more of an anti-authority kind of thing. Very
ironic.
Yeah,
very ironic to the present.
but yes, Triple H basically led those factions. You can go either way with that. The 2-man power trip with Stone Cold. He's done a lot, and with the creation of NXT, with losing 4 out of the last, actually now it would be 5 out of the last 7 WrestleManias. Before this 33, it would have been 4 out of the 6. Now he's lost 5 out of the 7 last WrestleManias. And he's putting over younger stars. as opposed to whenever he was just burying people, or people says that he was burying. But I mean, he's probably lost more than he's won. Lost more WrestleMania matches than he's won. Now he's headlined 7, which we didn't really check that statistic, but I'm pretty sure it might be the highest, because if he's headlined 7, then you have then that's 7 WrestleManias that no one else can headline. So I think Roman Reigns would obviously beat him, but
he will he will pretty soon. He's headlined 3 in a row.
Yeah,
so.
And he's gonna headline next year's. But Triple H, his most memorable matches, obviously with The Undertaker.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic match. He knows how to tell a story. He knows how to get over with the crowd. I mean, even as a heel, which he works best as, I think. As a heel, everyone loves to boo him, and he knows how to get the boos. And I think that's something that just doesn't come naturally anymore. But Triple H knows how to do it. He's the game. He is.
At my number 3, it's a toss-up. I kind of partially want to switch 2 and 3 now, but I'm going to keep it as it is. My number 3 is the Hardys. I refuse to call them the Hardy Boys. They are not boys. They are men now. They are the Hardy Men. That sounds funny.
The Hardy Men.
The Hardy Men. We are the Hardy Men. The Hardys are by far my favorite tag team of all time. They are just so charismatic. Jeff is super charismatic, and Matt has been given the chance to show that he is just as charismatic, if not maybe more. I loved them in their first runs in WWE. I loved the rivalry they had between themselves at different times. I loved after they left WWE. This is one of the few times we'll talk about outside of WWE, but you have to talk about the Broken Matt and Brother Nero gimmicks. They were amazing. I hope that they're able to bring that into WWE at some point, because I think that's the best of the Hardys that we've ever seen. That was amazing. Just the whole thing. I love the way Matt talks when he's broken. I love the delete thing. I just love it, the whole thing. They're amazing. I'm so glad that they're back with WWE, and they're the champions again. That's so awesome. They are now 7-time tag team champions. The Hardys are just amazing. I love that they're back. I can't wait to see more. I hope that they continue to be super strong. I just hope they destroy every other tag team in the world up until there's no more left, and then break them up and have them be single champions and have them just have every title in WWE. I love the Hardys. They are the greatest tag team ever. And there's absolutely no way that you can convince me otherwise. But now on to the top 2.
Top 2. This is where it gets difficult to decide. Actually, for me, 2 and 3 were difficult to decide. Because we knew number 1 would be. But number 2 is Triple H's partner in crime, literally, Shawn Michaels. And Shawn Michaels has done so much too. I mean, he's given everything that he's had to WWE. He's one of the few people who's probably not. He's one of the old school guys. He's not left WWE to go wrestle somewhere else. He's a WWE person through and through. He's given his best. He's given, so many good years of entertainment. Most memorable matches with The Undertaker. In fact, both of his matches with The Undertaker won Match of the Year those 2 years. And of course, Undertaker retiring, Shawn Michaels, and now Shawn Michaels is in the Hall of Fame. Altogether, he won the World Championship 4 times, and he won the Royal Rumble twice in 95 and 96. So I definitely think those are some good accomplishments, one of those being from the number 1 position, because Shawn Michaels is just that awesome. Mr. WrestleMania is what he's known as, because he always puts on a great show at WrestleMania. The match with Chris Jericho, when we talked about earlier with the feud of the decade, that's kind of where it culminated, was WrestleMania 2000, Jericho versus Michaels. And what a great match that was. Um, and of course, I did love his theme song, and I love the little thing he would do, and then the fireworks right behind him. That was always the best. And his days with DX, he was always the funny one, which is why I'm the Shawn Michaels of your Triple H. But anyway, um, number two, my definite number two favorite wrestler of all time is Shawn Michaels.
Definitely. And when you talk about the theme song of Shawn Michaels, another honorable mention that we have to throw in there is Kurt Angle with his rendition of "I'm a Sexy Kurt." I'll make your ankle hurt. One of the greatest. He's definitely another honorable mention. He was definitely up there in debate for top 10. But my number two is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold, Stone Cold. I love Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was one of my absolute favorites of the Attitude Era. What I was able to see of the Attitude Era live and then watching it back later on, he is by far the face of the Attitude Era. But obviously, he was so amazing and just charismatic in a different way. And the fact that he didn't care to be charismatic, he just was. Austin 316, one of the best promos of all time. And it defined who he was, and it just led to so much greatness. Zack talked about his accomplishments a little bit in his spot, but 6-time champion, the only person to ever win 3 Royal Rumbles, just incredible. He like Zack said, his rivalry with Mr. McMahon. Definitely one of the greatest rivalries I think in WWE history, and it won WWE the Monday Night Wars, so that's definitely something. Like without Stone Cold Steve Austin, we may not have WWE anymore. If that had not come to pass, it was unfortunate that he did have to cut his career short with his neck injuries. But when in his time that he had, he was definitely one of the greatest of WWE, and one of my favorite finishers, the Stone Cold Stunner, which Kevin Owens cannot accomplish to the same effect. Definitely great. One of my favorite theme songs. Not really favorite theme songs. One of my favorite beginnings to a theme song. Just the glass shatter. It was perfect. Like the rest of the theme song, I wouldn't even
Everyone
really
marked out
listen
when the glass shattered.
Just every time.
Just knew.
And like what I loved is whenever they almost got it perfect, when he would Stone Cold stun somebody and then the glass would shatter right as they hit. It was so good. Stone Cold was just amazing. Like Zack said, I love to listen to him today. With his podcast, he talks about the current WWE and what he thinks about it, and it's just really interesting. But Stone Cold will always be one of my favorites at number 2. And that brings us to the number 1 position, guys. And this is the only spot in the list that me and Zack agree on.
What?
When it comes, I know it's crazy. When it comes to who the number 1 person is, when it comes to WWE and their run there is no one that can possibly top in our minds the legendary 27-year career of The Undertaker. What can you say about The Undertaker? We don't have time to talk about all that The Undertaker did. The Undertaker's amazing. He is a 7-time world champion, the Royal Rumble winner of 2007, which led to one of the couple of the greatest matches in WrestleMania, obviously against Shawn Michaels. He had the streak at WrestleMania, one of the greatest highlights of WrestleMania and of WWE is the streak, culminating at 21-0 before it was finally broken by Brock Lesnar, that big muscly jerk. But of course, his WrestleMania, it seems that his WrestleMania moments are over as a wrestler, and his streak ends at 23-2. Just amazing, crazy number, like 23 out of 25 wins, that is just unbeatable.
And 23 out of 27 years.
Yeah.
I mean, so not only are we talking about... Now, of course, the streak wasn't even really officially recognized as a streak until
Right.
he hit maybe like, I think it was 13 or 14.
Yeah,
it was
somewhere in there.
early 2000s, actually, with his feud with Randy Orton. It became something to beat.
Yeah.
And then everyone tried to beat it. And then eventually... I still don't know how to feel about Brock Lesnar being the one to defeat the Undertaker's streak.
Yeah.
However, Undertaker, from what I understand, from everything I've read, nothing can really convince me otherwise that Undertaker wanted Brock to be the one. So
Yeah.
I mean, if the Undertaker, and just like all the fans, and of course, I don't think if this is the last Undertaker's last Mania, I don't agree with the decision with Reigns being the one to defeat him. But from what I've heard, Undertaker wanted it to be Reigns. So while I may not agree with that, I mean, it's Undertaker who wants it.
I hadn't heard about that. I do know that when the streak came to an end, it was honestly a couple of years before that. Undertaker started asking Vince. He was saying from what records show that he was wanting to end the streak sooner than what it ended.
Yep.
But people just didn't want it to end.
Yeah.
And so they kept it going for a few more years, but eventually they did decide to give the streak to Brock Lesnar, which, is debatable of whether or not you agree. I also don't really agree. I don't think that Brock needed it. And I definitely don't think Reigns needed it.
Oh gosh, no, he didn't.
Like, I don't know. I still can't culminate my thoughts to that moment.
And the Undertaker is just the character himself. He's probably one of the only characters to have lasted this long as this gimmick and as popular, I guess, because I mean he's been in WWE since I think he debuted in 1990.
Yeah.
And so and he debuted as the Undertaker, which was ironically supposed to be a joke gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
He debuted as a joke, and then it actually became something serious. Yeah. And then of course he did have those couple of years as Big Evil, the biker taker, and that was kind of cool. I like how that ended and how he brought back the Dead Man when he wrestled Kane at WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just all in all, Taker is probably the most dedicated wrestler of all time. I mean, to one promotion his entire career. I think he wrestled somewhere before, but I mean, 37 years in one place is a lot of your life, and he's only 52. So, and I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh yeah, and he rarely broke character.
Yeah.
I mean, he never did it on TV.
The only times he ever broke character was at Ric Flair's retirement.
Yes.
He gave Ric Flair a couple hugs, which was really cool to see. And then at WrestleMania 33, where he kissed his wife. Those are the only times that I can really think. While I didn't love his biker persona as much, I did like that did give the chance for him to be a little more Mark Calloway and to bring out a little bit of his own personality to it, and also it gave him the chance to talk a bit more. I did enjoy that. We can never say enough about Undertaker. Yeah. He is he's by far the reason why I fell in love with wrestling. He was just so unique, so cool, so he had that little bit of creepy vibe. I loved his powers. It was so unique, and just the storyline between him and Kane with the Brothers of Destruction, such a cool story. Could have maybe been done a little bit better, but definitely in all, one of the most dedicated for sure to his craft, and one of the most dedicated people to WWE. So I think that it's interesting doing this video now as opposed to if we'd have done it before WrestleMania, because because if we'd have done it before, we would have just talked about how awesome Taker is, but there's a little bit of sadness now when thinking about Taker, because the retirement is so fresh.
Yeah.
It's literally only been 4 days as at the time of this recording. So it's definitely a mixed emotion now with Undertaker, but he will by far always be my favorite wrestler.
And my favorite wrestler.
There's no question that Undertaker is the greatest wrestler ever. He's just super awesome. But
and so to end this video, that's been our top 10, and I hope you've enjoyed. Please leave in the comments if you agree with one of us, if you disagree with both of us, or whatever, or if you just think that maybe all of these wrestlers are deserving of just a huge top wrestlers list. But favorite superstar ever, The Undertaker. And if this is indeed Undertaker's last ride as The Undertaker, if he is officially retiring, then this is Wawa Echo saying thank you, Taker.